Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about why I ended up not going to film school. About 3-4 years ago, I actually ended up getting accepted to VFS, Vancouver Film School. It's a very well-known film school here on the West Coast in Canada. And if you want to learn filmmaking, VFS is where you go. For a year, it's about, I think it's something like $50K for a year to study film at VFS, which is a pretty hefty price tag, but to be fair, they have a lot of connections in the film industry. They have state-of-the-art equipment. They have, fully built out studio spaces. They have set building and design. It's a very, very well-resourced school, and they do a good job of teaching film. And so this is not me, hating on VFS at all. They're an incredible school, and anyone that goes there is going to be good at their craft. A lot of the people that have worked on, Avengers movies came from VFS. A lot of people, if you look at the credits, there's going to be names of people that actually came out of VFS. And so they're a great school. Now, I chose that it wasn't for me, and I want to talk a little bit about why I made that decision. There's a couple different factors that went into my decision-making process, so I'll briefly lay those out. The first is that for me, I value firsthand experience. I like to learn not just hypothetically, but I like to learn in the industry, and I like to have a learning experience where I can, talk to someone one-on-one quite easily, that I can, be under someone directly that knows what they're doing. That's how I learn best. I like to get my hands dirty, roll my sleeves up, get right into it. And so that's something that I know about myself. I'm not very good at learning on paper, so to speak. I'm not good at, taking tests or memorizing information and just writing it down on paper. Like that's just not me. I'm someone that is very much a visual learner. That's why I'm in videography, is I'm a very visual person. And I'm also someone that learns very much by doing it myself and figuring it out myself. And so for me, I wanted a scenario where I could learn actually being in the field. And for me, I think something that I value as well is not just learning the craft itself, but also learning everything that goes along with it. I knew that for me, I eventually wanted to run my own videography business, and I knew that there's a lot more that goes into running a business than simply knowing how to film something and make it look nice. There's a whole business side to it, a marketing side, on top of the craft itself. And so for me, I wanted to get right into it. And so what ended up actually happening is during that time I was considering going to VFS, I was actually doing an internship at a church that I attend. And I was working in the youth department, and I had been doing basically all of their digital media. So their photography, their videography, graphic design, motion graphics, all that sort of stuff. I was doing all of it. I was, working 50 hours a week, basically, 50, 60 hours a week, putting this content together. I dove into it. And that's where I really started to think, hey, maybe videography is something that I could do. And that's why I was considering going to VFS. But from that, I actually got offered a job at that church on their media and communications team as their videographer. And so I opted for that opportunity rather than taking a year and going to VFS, because for me, I really valued having that firsthand experience of me, filming content day in, day out, making sure that I'm, learning and then making and then repeating. That's something that Matty Hapoya, if you follow him, he always talks about, is learn, make, repeat. And I really wanted to ingrain that in myself, and not do, a project, one project a semester. I wanted to make essentially hundreds of videos by the time I moved on from that position. And so I really learned how to get efficient at filming and editing and color grading and all these different components of the filmmaking process. It also enabled me to have access to Nick, who was my boss, and he had 15 years of experience in the filmmaking industry. He had started a company before that has gone on to do quite substantial commercial work. And he had experience. He had worked for a wedding company that was basically the most successful wedding company in Vancouver in its time. And so for me, that was incredibly valuable, is to get that firsthand access to that as a resource, to get that training and mentorship. And to this day, I'm so appreciative for that. I would not be the filmmaker I am today if it wasn't for that experience. And where he really shines is editing. And that's something that I now like to think is one of my greatest skills, is my editing, and specifically how proficient I am at it. And that's something that I really learned from him. That's something that he was really, really talented in and skilled in, and still is. And so I was able to get wisdom, or glean some wisdom from that, and learn a lot from him in that area. Another reason for making the decision I did is that we all only have a limited amount of resources. So if I was to spend $50K at VFS, that $50K would be gone. I wouldn't have that $50K to spend on something else. And for me, I didn't necessarily want to spend that money. Yes, it would be investing in myself as far as education goes, but for me, I thought that I could probably get that education elsewhere through that position I had at the church, as well as, the plethora of knowledge that's online. I thought from that, I could probably teach myself a lot about filmmaking. And with that, then I could use that resource of that money, and I could put that towards gear and actually get a little bit of a head start on accumulating that gear that then I could use to form a business and start generating income. And so that's what I did. At the church, they had gear provided, so I was able to learn on a lot of different gear there. I was able to get firsthand training, and then I was able to use some of the money that I would have spent on school to buy myself, a good computer to edit on, to buy myself my first camera, to buy some lighting gear. And that way I was able to actually get paid to learn. And then from getting paid to learn, I was able to invest in gear. And then once I was able to accumulate that knowledge and that gear, I started my business and was able to start making, even more money than I was making before, with the knowledge that I accumulated and the gear that I had also accumulated. I think that's a big differentiating factor is, are you someone that wants to be a freelancer and get hired out by, a production company, or even be an employee under a production company? Or are you someone that wants to start your own business? For me, I was the latter. I knew from the get-go that I wanted to start my own business, and I knew that that was going to take some investment up front, investing in gear, investing in, accounting software and an accountant, and all these expenses that come with operating a business that you don't necessarily think of. And so I knew that that was something that was going to be a cost up front. So I knew that I only had a certain amount of budget to work with. So for me, the best of both worlds was to be able to get paid to learn, and then be able to purchase gear with some of that money that I was making and money that I had saved up before. With that said, I'm a firm believer that everyone is very, very different. People learn in different ways, people value different things. And so I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all strategy. Even for me, I think I took the road less traveled, in the sense that growing up, it was always, I almost felt the pressure to go to college or university. Both my siblings went to college and university. And that's something that, my grandparents valued, my family valued, but I chose not to do that. I didn't think that that was the right decision for me. And I would say that in the position that I'm in now, I think that was absolutely the right call. I'm so thankful for the position that I am in now. I'm thankful that I'm up and running a business. I'm thankful for the companies that I've been able to help and provide services for. And I'm doing what I love, and I'm passionate, and I love continuing to learn. And I do that online through YouTube or, blogs or forums. I love just being a sponge and soaking all of that up. And I still do that. Even though I never technically went to school, I consider myself someone that is being educated and someone that is learning just through a different means. But not everyone is going to be that way. And you might be the kind of person that really does benefit from film school or some sort of other kind of school, maybe marketing or business courses or whatever it may be. Formal education still is, very, very valuable, and that's something that I would recommend. It just isn't what I thought was best for me. And I think that is an option too. You don't have to go to school to be good at something. There's a lot of people that go to school that end up being not very good at what they studied for. And there's a lot of people that didn't go to school that end up being very good at what they do. And a lot of it just comes down to drive and the ability to learn and continue learning and be a life learner, as cheesy as that sounds and is. I truly do believe in continuing to learn. And I guess that's another factor too in my whole decision here is that, some advice that I got was that, the film industry is changing very rapidly, particularly because technology is changing so rapidly. And so being that, every 6 months a new camera comes out that is pretty revolutionary and knocks the last king, so to speak, off the throne, schools can't update their curriculum fast enough. And so you need to be able to learn outside of school. You need to be, if you're going to be in the film industry, you need to be someone who's able to keep up with the latest and greatest to stay competitive. And so that means techniques, that means equipment, and that doesn't mean you always buy the latest camera that comes out, but it does mean you need to know which ones are worth upgrading to and when. And so, yeah, I think it comes down to that. Are you going to be someone that is driven? Or are you going to be someone that continues learning even after school if you do end up going to school? I think those are the things that really play into if you end up being successful long term. That's what I've found so far in my career. I always have to be changing and evolving and getting better, sharpening my skills, upgrading my equipment, doing all these things that I can to give my customers the best product at the end of the day. And I think that shows. And I think that that's something that at least I've found my clients really appreciate. And I think that goes a really, really long way. So that's a little bit about my story and how I ended up where I am today. And hopefully that's encouraging for you, no matter where you are along that filmmaking journey. I would just encourage you, just keep pursuing it, keep learning, keep being a sponge and just soaking in that information. Go out there, just take your camera, shoot, edit it, make projects. That's how you're going to get better. That's the only way anyone gets better, is just by practice and repeating the same thing over and over and over and getting faster at it, getting more proficient at it. And that at the end of the day, that's the best advice that I could give. And so hopefully you found this valuable. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe to the channel. That helps me to know that you want to see this content. It helps me to continue making content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.